Imagine a production line where the components inside a sealed tube glide perfectly along their track. The internal sensors report absolute efficiency. But outside the boundary of that tube, the rejected materials pile up, spark, and grind the larger machine to a halt. In modern business operations, we track our internal smoothness using a metric called cost to serve. It calculates exactly how much money it takes to handle a single unit of activity, whether answering a customer call, processing a transaction, or closing a support ticket. Tracking this unit cost is entirely rational. It allows a business to monitor channel expenses and maintain a standard operational profit and loss statement. We need to know what our specific activities cost. But this creates a persistent operational paradox. Year after year, departmental leaders report massive, sustained productivity improvements, and yet the total service budget for the enterprise continues to increase. The math breaks down because organizations learn to artificially drive down their cost to serve. They strictly limit phone calls, close unresolved cases for quotas, and force users to self-service. Doing this triggers an expensive secondary reaction: failure demand. When a customer's issue isn't actually resolved, it generates rework, repeat phone calls, and high-level escalations. The customer keeps coming back, forcing the organization to spend more money handling the exact same problem. When you optimize purely for the cost of a single unit of activity, you make doing the work cheaper. You do not actually make the work successful. Treating an isolated burst of internal activity as if it were the ultimate outcome creates an illusion of efficiency. We get incredibly good at doing the wrong things faster. To see the true economic reality, we have to track a different metric: cost to successful customer outcome, or cost to SCO. This measures the total end-to-end expense required to take a customer from a problem arising to that problem being fully resolved. Measuring isolated internal activity provides a comforting view of the operation, but it hides systemic failure behind a wall of apparently healthy data points. Traditional metrics produce false positives because they draw arbitrary measurement boundaries around internal departmental handoffs, rather than tracking the reality of the customer's experience. Consider a standard process improvement initiative. A bank decides to move its mortgage application process out of a physical branch and into a digital, self-service web portal. This diagram shows a tight boundary drawn specifically around the IT and digital departments. Evaluated in this isolated box, the cost per online submission drops significantly. The project looks like a complete success, but the customer experience management method uses the need-to-outcome framework. This shifts the boundary to cover the entire timeline, from the initial need to final resolution. Outside the digital box, applicants are repeatedly uploading rejected documents, calling agents for advice, abandoning the form entirely, and eventually raising complaints. The financial burden of that chaotic journey bleeds entirely out of the digital silo. It hits the contact center fielding the confused calls, the underwriting team reviewing fragmented files, and the service recovery team handling the complaints. Because of how standard reporting works, each of those individual departments might still appear highly efficient on paper, successfully hitting their own internal handling times for each interaction. Optimizing in isolated silos means every department can claim a victory, while the sum of those isolated efficiencies results in a massively expensive, completely broken process for the customer. To accurately map these end-to-end economics, we need a mathematical model that tracks reality, not just departmental activity. Here is the top half of the cost to SCO equation. The numerator must encompass every single organizational cost spent trying to satisfy those customers. That includes the intended work, plus repeat contacts, rework, escalations, and failed attempts. The denominator is where the conversation changes. It strictly measures the number of actual customer outcomes achieved, completely discarding metrics like cases closed, calls answered, or tasks completed. Defining a true successful outcome requires rigorous discipline. Take the example of an insurance claim. Notice the gap between the organization's definition of success and the customer's reality. The left side represents internal completion. The right represents the actual purpose. Closing a claim file is merely an administrative event. It is an action done to the customer by the insurer. The customer did not wake up wanting to participate in a claims process. They want to recover from a loss and regain financial certainty within the terms of their contract. That recovery is the only outcome that actually matters. A business metric is economically valid only if its denominator represents the verifiable resolution of the original need that drove the customer to interact in the first place. We can mathematically prove how this distinction exposes hidden costs by running a brief comparative analysis. Let's examine two different service operations that spend the exact same amount of money in a single month. Operation 1 resolves customer needs correctly the first time. The work is accurate, requiring minimal repeat contact. Operation 2 rapidly closes a massive volume of cases. However, their speed comes at the expense of accuracy, generating thousands of repeat calls, reopened work tickets, and complaints. If evaluated purely on conventional productivity metrics, Operation 2 appears much healthier. Their activity volume is high, and their cost per transaction is incredibly low. But when we apply the cost-to-SQ equation to Operation 1, dividing their total budget by a high number of actual verified customer successes, the math yields a low, accurate cost per outcome. Applying that exact same equation to Operation 2, we divide their identical monthly budget by a much smaller number of true successes. The resulting cost per outcome is astronomically higher. This simple mathematical shift immediately strips away Operation 2's illusion of efficiency. Under the cost-to-SQ model, systemic failure can no longer hide inside artificially inflated activity numbers. It shifts the entire management conversation. You stop asking how efficiently a department performed its specific tasks and start asking how economically the organization fulfilled its actual purpose. Transitioning to this model does not require a massive 6-month enterprise finance project. You can implement it rapidly by following 5 specific steps. Step 1. Choose one critical customer journey and define the required outcome strictly using the customer's language and goals. Step 2. Set absolute measurement boundaries. Start the clock the exact moment the customer's need arises and stop it only when that specific outcome is achieved. Step 3. Map the financial data. Follow the cost across every team, system, and channel involved, ensuring you capture the heavy expense of rework, delays, and escalations. Step 4. Count only the successes. Cases that reopen, abandoned applications, and unresolved contacts are excluded from the denominator. Step 5. Segment the data. Break your findings down by customer circumstance or failure reason to expose exactly where broad averages are hiding your most expensive service failures. Running this sprint forces teams to abandon debates about silo efficiency. It demands that they ask which specific parts of their daily work genuinely move the customer toward resolution. Tracking successful outcomes connects directly to overarching business strategy, driving what is known as the outside-in triple crown. First, the cost impact. Overall enterprise expenses drop organically because you eliminate the failure demand and unnecessary handovers that consume operational budgets. Second, the service impact. Service quality rises because customers achieve their goals, requiring significantly less elapsed time and personal effort. Third, the revenue impact. Long-term revenue is protected because successful customers actually utilize their purchases and have tangible reasons to return. Implementing this does not mean operations should discard the traditional cost-to-serve metric entirely. Cost-to-serve remains a vital, supporting operational measure. You still need to understand exactly what individual channels and specific transactions cost the business. The difference lies in what the metrics actually evaluate. Cost-to-serve asks, how cheaply did we handle the customer? Cost-to-SCO asks, what did it actually cost the whole organization to help that customer succeed? In a complex service operation, doing things cheaply is easy, but optimizing for customer success is the only verifiably accurate measure of true business efficiency.